Hey guys, today we're going to be going over 4 betting out of position. So 4 betting out of position is a lot more common than 4 betting in position. This is for a couple of reasons. The first reason, and in my opinion the main reason, is that when we open in these positions here, the players who are in position of us, namely the button and cutoff, normally, they're going to want to abuse their positional advantage, so they're going to be 3 betting a lot more. So if we just use this situation for example, we open the cutoff, the button, a good reg who's kind of balanced and aggressive, and has a variety of hands in his 3-bet range, might have like 8 to 10 or maybe even 11% 3-bet. Whereas if we look at cutoff versus small blind in this spot where we open, this player 3-bets, this player might be 3-betting a frequency between like 5, 7, maybe 8% at a maximum. So the 3-bet range by this player is a lot wider, which allows us to 4-bet wider for value out of position against this player, and hands which we would 4-bet against the button, we would be more inclined to flat versus a small blind 3-bet when we're in position. So hands like pocket queens, pocket jacks, ace king off, and some stuff like this. So yeah, when we're out of position, it's pretty easy or straightforward to play your strongest hands. Like when you're out of position in 6-max, all of these hands I've highlighted are typically easy 4-bets, almost regardless of the situation. And yeah, there's some certain dynamics which you need to be aware of. So in like the nano stakes, like 2 zoom to like 25 zoom and 50 zoom, there are going to be players who only 3-bet these hands, and you kind of need to be, I guess a good starting point we can go over is knowing how to outplay this 3-bet range. So obviously it's very tight, but yeah, let's just go. You'll basically be in some situations where if they always 3-bet these hands and they always 5-bet kings plus, then when you 4-bet and get jammed on, you want to fold these and you just chop, okay? Ace king and pocket queens being a fold. Whereas if you 4-bet these, the player jams these two, and you get called, you're going up against ace king and pocket queens when you have queens plus and ace king yourself, and you'll notice that because they've capped themselves, you have the range advantage here. You have a big equity lead, and yeah, if we just look at some typical flops, so if the flop is ace high, you're gonna chop with your ace kings more or less, and then you're gonna win with pocket aces, which gives you an extra advantage. On a king high board, the same thing, you're gonna chop with ace king, and you're gonna win with pocket kings, which he doesn't have. Queen high boards is gonna be roughly a chop. You're probably gonna lose with ace king because you might get outplayed, but the initiative might be enough to win you the hand. And then on the very low boards, like a jack or lower, you win because the opponent has pocket queens only, whereas you have pocket queens which you chop with, then you have kings plus, so you win in that regard. So yeah, when you get flat called, when your 4-bet is called, you should feel pretty good about your hand. And then when you get jammed on, the best thing to do is to fold the junky hands and just do like a range chop strategy. So there'll be a lot of 4-bet folding and 4-bet mergy type hands, which you're not continuing with, which is completely fine. So that's against the most common situation that you might see against tight players. And then obviously as you move on stakes and players are getting more aggressive and they're playing wider, you need to have a better grasp of what kind of strategies you want to use. And what makes 4-betting out of position so flexible and variable is that it really depends on the 3-bet in position, the player who's in position, what they're 3-betting, what frequency they're 3-betting, and the sizing they use. So yeah, so if someone is 3-betting a big sizing with like polarized bluffs, let's say we're looking at MP versus a button 3-bet. We open MP, button 3-bets. The button 3-bet might be something like this. So how do you counter this kind of strategy? Well, this is quite polarized, so calling out of position is not terrible, and then you can try and sometimes win against his bluffs, but you're going to get smashed. I mean, this range is still really strong, but when you 4-bet, assuming he's going to 5-bet his strong stuff, you can be doing pretty well when you get called. So basically, when your 4-bet gets called, you should feel quite comfortable with your range. You're going to have a good range advantage, so that's one thing to remember. But yeah, if the player does have more bluffs, let's say, and he's calling his mid-strength stuff, then yeah, your bluff catch is out of position, which would be hands like 10s through to 7s. They might be doing better. So yeah, so against polarized 3-bets, calling down and taking flops is not so bad, but yeah, it's still going to be tricky to play, and there's going to be a lot of money back still, which can make it tough to play against. So against polarized strategies like this, it's kind of either bluff catch or like re-raise and fold. So yeah, then the second kind of strategy you might go up against is if the imposition player is 3-betting for a smaller sizing. So this is like a polarized sizing, but if the player made it like $10 here or 12, kind of 2.5x the open to 3x, they might be using a merge strategy, which is just the 3-bet like all of the mid-strength hands. So let's just imagine it's cut off first button. It might be like all of this stuff. They might just be like never or very rarely calling. So obviously this frequency is very wide. The frequency I mentioned earlier went up to about 10%, but this is 13%. But you can kind of, your bluffs are more efficient if you're re-raising a smaller sizing. So it's important to know what strategy your opponent is up against and how you can attack that. So attacking this, I mean, it's pretty obvious what you can do against this, and yeah, my advice would just be to 4-bet everything for a large sizing or like a lot of hands, because I think when someone's 3-betting a wide range of hands, they're going to be wanting to call in position versus 4-bets, or they're wanting to take flops and play large pots in position, 3-bet pots, but they're not always going to be wanting to call the 4-bet. So if they do call the 4-bet, they're going to be behind with a massive selection of hands, because they can't just defend the strong hands because they're a very low percentage of the entire range. So yeah, they're not going to be able to defend. They either have to fold, which you win, or they call and they're dominated. If you 4-bet the strongest like 7% of hands, or like, sorry, not, maybe like 6%, then yeah, they're going to be struggling to play against this. And yeah, you can also, so this would be a merged strategy, 4-betting this, and then you can also include like bluffs like this, and maybe cut out some of the flats, and then they'd still be struggling against this. So yeah, and 4-betting out of position is typically like a small re-raise, but that's because typical 4-bets are quite nutted, and if people are nutted and they want calls or they want action, they go smaller. So if you're targeting someone who likes to play pots and likes to play some post-flop poker, then I would recommend like using a larger sizing. I personally like using big sizings because I am looking for folds when I do 4-bet out of position. So yeah, so you just really need to be switched on about what strategy they're using and how you can counter that. And yeah, so people who like to 3-bet wide, in my opinion, they also like to relinquish the pot a lot when they face a 4-bet, just because 4-bets are typically very tight. So people give them a lot of respect from my experience. So yeah, only a tiny % of the population 4-bet bluff. So yeah, people 3-bet fold a lot if they're 3-betting wide, but the reason people don't 4-bet bluff much is because most like regs or nits or whatever don't 3-bet bluff very wide, so or they don't 3-bet bluff very much, and like the 3-bet range is very strong, so bluffing into it is not that profitable. But if you know your opposition, then knowing who you can bluff and what hands you should use is good. So just a quick note on blockers. Obviously you want to kind of block the strongest hands, Queen's plus. So yeah, these are good hands to use. King Queen off I would stay away from, but maybe there's a good argument for using it, but I think I'd be careful with that one. When you get called, you can't, if someone slow plays ace king, you can be dominated, and aces, if you unblock aces completely, so that kind of sucks. But yeah, just having blockers around this is obviously pretty good, and having an ace on these are playable. And even in this hand, this guy had pocket kings, spoiler alert, but ace 3 suited does a pretty good job, or all of these wheel aces do a pretty good job of overtaking hands like this. So yeah, that's something to think about, but you should already know from our previous videos. So yeah, you want to block the 5-bet range, which are these, and also block the calling range, which is this kind of stuff, which is obviously fine. High suited Broadway cards is what you want, and yeah, maybe jacks plus for value versus merged 3-bets. So yeah, you generally want to have a good idea, like preset your strategies against like polar 3-bets and mergy 3-bets, just so that you don't have to make it up on the go. Making it up on the go is not the worst thing in the world, but it's quite nice to have a plan, like what is this guy's 3-bet range, what do I often play up against, because not every player is the same. So yeah, just having a good bank of knowledge to draw on is quite important. So yeah, just maybe design a few ranges that you might want to play around with, see what works. Working on your bet sizing, big bet size of your big bet size of your polar, smaller bet size of your merged, and then yeah, choose the hands appropriately. If you're gonna have flatting ranges and stuff, you can't like value bet too thin with a massive sizing with like jacks and tens, for example. 4-betting out of position, you'll just kill yourself basically. Okay. So yeah, hard definitely helps with this kind of play, because you need to know what the 3-bet frequency is, whereas open raise ranges are pretty standard across all players. And yeah, knowing how often the opponent is folding can also help. So some players might be 3-bet calling a lot in position if they think you're a weak player, just 3-betting a load of merge stuff, and they're always planning to call your 4-bet because they want to play against you if they think you're bad or they think they're spewy. I think this has happened to me a couple of times, which if I've polarized, done a 4-bet with a wheel ace and someone's 3-bet calling ace 10 suited, once I see that once, then I'll cut out these bluffs and start 4-bet bluffing ace jack suited, ace queen suited, etc., where I'm dominating his 3-bet and then floats. So yeah, like they might have like a folding frequency of like 20% versus 4-bet, but other players might fold like 90% to a 4-bet if they're 3-bet folding a lot because they think you fold a lot to 3-bet. So there's lots of variables in play, but yeah, this is pretty much everything I wanted to cover. So the key things I would ask you to focus on is, if the guy is playing very tight and straightforward and 3-betting hands like this, then know that you can 4-bet the same range, and when you get called, you're going to win. And then you have to be disciplined and fold these hands when you get 5-bet jammed on. If someone is 3-betting a small sizing with a wide range, you can 4-bet very wide for value. Hands like this suddenly become strong enough to value bet against the 13% range we had highlighted earlier, which is very wide, like this. So you can expand your value range, and this kind of range does worse against the larger bet size because pocket nines are not going to do too great when you're putting in 1/4 of the stack, but if you give someone like 3-1 on the call, they're probably just going to call anyway, and they might be able to outplay you. And yeah, if they're using big sizes, then yeah, you just want to beat their stack offs, which you'll get to very narrow ranges very quickly. But yeah, and also, to be honest, also if they use the big sizing in position and it's properly polarized, then clicking back is not so bad because they might have to fold, or like get induced into calling with their bluffs. So yeah, against big sizes you can actually use the small size, but against small sizes I would prefer the big size. It's kind of a mouthful, but yeah. So I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.